Hello and welcome to Inspiring Innovators. I'm Manjula from Institute of Inspiring Innovation. Thank you for joining us on this virtual talk show, Inspiring Innovators, a show to showcase innovative people, their innovations, and the impact it's creating. We'll have a 40 minutes talk show followed by questions if you have any. Feel free to type your questions in the chat box. We'll bring them up in the end. Now let's invite our host Naveen Lakkur, Chief Innovation Coach at Institute of Inspiring Innovation, to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Manjula. Welcome, everyone, and very happy to bring Shyam Sundar Nagarajan, who is very passionate about innovation, be it within the corporates that he's worked in Infosys or at Cognizant, where at Infosys he spent 4 years and working in different capacities, and at Cognizant for over 14 years, again in different capacities and roles. But one thing was common is his passion for innovation and his restlessness and his interest to get involved into something new and be taking some initiatives. You will get to know more about it. And it's gone to the next level altogether that he is ventured into entrepreneurial innovation now. Let's welcome Shyam Sundar Nagarajan. Hi, Shyam Sundar, and we would love to hear about your the new venture. Can you brief us about the new venture?
Sure, Naveen. First of all, proud to be being hosted by you and by your institute. It's great to be called an innovator, right? So I'm happy that you recognize that, and then happy to be on this talk show. Prestigious moment for me. So the current venture that I lead is called GoFloaters. It's a startup that's little over 2.5 years old. With GoFloaters, we are kind of challenging the status quo on the way we work, and the status quo on commercial real estate as we know it when it comes to offices and meeting spaces. So I believe and I dream of a world where an individual or a team can be as productive and happy working from anywhere. And we enable that through our on-demand flexi workspaces across the 12 cities that we are present in now, and with over 1,200 spaces that users can book it through our app. So in essence, basically the objective is to convert offices into a utility that an individual or a team can tap into whenever, wherever they want, and not having to pay huge amounts of rent and get locked into a liability that haunts them later on. So that's basically what we do at GoFloaters.
Oh, wow. Interesting. This reminds me of one of the situation I had in Silicon Valley in the US. I was looking for a meeting, and there was one meeting scheduled, and we had to meet in the coffee place. Right. So we had a meeting, and then I was about to leave, and I asked this gentleman saying, "Hey, where is your office actually?" He said, "Which office are you asking about?" I said, "Your office." Oh, he said, "I have 2,000 plus offices." Right. So I was like, wow, I didn't know that, you're a person who has 2,000 plus offices. So I was like stunned. And then he said, "Every Starbucks is my office." Yeah. So now I thought it was a nice way to say, but you've really taken it as a business model and innovation happening there as a reality. It looks like, people would have offices everywhere and anywhere with the way you are doing. Fantastic. So what's your latest innovation in that case?
It's interesting that you pointed out, Naveen, because GoFloaters was actually born out of the frustration of me paying for a coffee that I didn't like at some coffee chains. And that was the only way in which I could get access to a space. And that's something that didn't make sense to me. I said, hey, I want the space and I should be able to just pay for the space. Why pay for something that I don't want? And that frustration kind of led me into building GoFloaters.
Okay. So what's your latest innovation?
We started, like I said, right? GoFloaters started as a space a platform where informal meeting spaces can be booked, right? We partner with cafes and converted their lean hours into spaces that people can book whenever they needed it, right? So that's how it started. It was a small experiment started in Chennai with three cafe partners that I had in Chennai, right? And slowly it grew to 25 cafe partners across Chennai. And very interestingly, I thought we were building GoFloaters for those informal meetings. Like you said, you're meeting somebody and you want a space to meet, not necessarily be burdened by the food bill there. But interestingly, we saw that more and more people started to use it more for formal mechanisms. There were a lot of freelancers who were working from home for most of the time, but they wanted workspaces where they can professionally go focus themselves and get stuff done, right? And constantly having this ear on the ground and listening into what our customers were doing with what we had to offer, we kept on innovating in terms of the kind of products and services, the kind of spaces that we offered for our customers. So we branched off into providing hot desks or formal office spaces, and also to meeting spaces there, right? And the innovation that I think we probably did there was that if you looked at, so we initially, like I said, we were doing with cafes, right? The other realization that dawned on me like 6 months or 7 months into doing GoFloaters was that every office space, every commercial office space that you have at least has 10% to 15% excess capacity, right? Any office building will have at least 10, if not more. So that kind of struck me, saying that, hey, can all office space needs at this could be potentially met if we unlock this underutilized space that's there in office buildings, right? So that's what we ended up doing, right? So from signing up cafes, we also signed up businesses that had excess capacity. Like, so for example, a training company would have 2 training rooms that they don't ever use, because that's the volume of training that they do has reduced, and they do a lot of it virtually. So we signed up training companies that had excess training rooms. We signed up meeting rooms from businesses that didn't use them around the clock. We took excess desks that were lying in office floors that were not being used. So kind of we kind of started to unlock the potential of these underutilized spaces, and so thereby providing more quality and more professional workspaces and meeting spaces to our customers. So kind of one thing led on to the other in terms of the kind of service offerings that we brought to the market.
Wow. Again, it goes back to this example that we took of Starbucks, right? I think one of the occasion when the founder was probably talking in one of the convention or convocation program. So I remember getting to know about this, that somebody asked, he asked, which business am I in, and everybody said a simple question. So I'm in coffee business, right? So but then he said, no, I'm actually in real estate business. In fact, incidentally, we charge through coffee or these, but real estate is their real business, and it's about having the atmosphere and having that environment for people to come meet, have interactions, and do their meetings. So maybe he said that, and now you're looking at how to enable in our country, in India, right? Where all are you operational in?
We're operational in 12 cities now. Started in Chennai, like I said, and Chennai, Coimbatore, Bangalore, Hyderabad. That's the order in which we kind of expanded. And now we are also in Trichy, Salem, Madurai, Kochi, Mumbai, Pune, the NCR region. So 12 cities in total.
Oh, fantastic. That also shows that you're entering the tier 2 cities. So what is your observation been? And, how did this whole model come up for tier 2 before even expanding in tier 1 cities?
So Coimbatore kind of came as more as an experiment, right? So we didn't know, frankly speaking, we didn't know how tier 2 is going to behave or react to such a model. So which is why we started Coimbatore much earlier on in our journey and said, hey, let's try something out in tier 2 and see how people there react to it, right? And we actually got a good response. I wouldn't say overwhelmingly good response, but we got a good response. And this is like way before COVID happened, right? So we said, tier 2, again, Coimbatore specifically and many other tier 2 cities were becoming the hotbed of the next wave of startups and next wave of freelancers, right? Because in my own personal experience, had a lot of talent who worked for me in Cognizant and Infosys. They quit their jobs to go back to Coimbatore or to their native towns to either set up a small business there or set up a IT service company there. So I kind of saw that tier 2 cities would be the next wave of how we say knowledge work economy is going to be built on top of tier 2 cities in India. So we said, hey, we should be there. We should be the foundational layer for such a economical activity to happen in those two cities. And so we started much earlier. And with COVID, things have kind of gone really fast with respect to tier 2 adoption. So yeah, so pretty excited about how things would shape up in tier 2 cities.
Yeah, actually, this raises to two questions. One is, you said you're experimenting in innovation, in this journey of innovation in entrepreneurial ventures. How important is it to experiment, to try new things? Is that a requirement, or is it a luxury, or is it an option? So what's your approach?
See, I'll quote somebody, I don't know, somebody really, really huge, right? The thin line of difference between innovation and invention is like an invention that gets adopted by people is innovation. Otherwise, it kind of stays in the books, stays as a patent application somewhere. But what's a use of a patent application that doesn't give any benefit to any potential user there, right? So innovation is all about having people to use and give feedback, and for you to kind of iterate over it and kind of perfect it over a period of time. So I've always believed that, so basically, quick answer to your question, without taking it to the market, and I would, it's a essential step. So if you have something innovative, I think you should feed it off to somebody, see how they react to it. It could be your parents, it could be your spouse, it could be your friends, but just in your head, I think the innovation has no value. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of them think innovation is about, like, great shake, big change, and so on. So it's about application of those ideas and being creative, solving some problem and putting it into use, right? So which you have to do, and you've been doing very good, and looks like you had some decent results also. But shifting to the other part, which you touched on, is COVID. So when everything is getting locked down, and you're talking about office space, so only place which everyone would have is their home as an office. So earlier office used to be office 1.0 is go to your corporate office, sit down, work, and our workplace. The second is very few people had the privilege of home office. Today, it is like everybody who has a home office. And thanks to COVID, it's completely changed the whole mindset, right?
Right.
We believe COVID is a catalyst for innovation. And how does it treat you?
Yeah, I think that's I think that I will completely go with that. COVID is a catalyst for innovation. And in fact, for a lot of industries, it has accelerated the rate at which innovation can happen, right? It's kind of given a new environment for ideas to kind of germinate out of the situation, right? And for us specifically, I'm just talking about from the business standpoint of view, COVID has been a blessing in disguise. I don't mean to talk about the sufferings that people are having in the situation that we're all in, but at least from a business standpoint of view, COVID has been a blessing in disguise, because here we were 3 years before COVID saying that talent should be distributed, people should be able to work from anywhere, right? Offices, the huge sprawling campuses that we've gotten so accustomed to are kind of anti-patterns in the new knowledge work-based world, right? Hey, just think of, in fact, just going back to my first day at work, right? I kind of climbed down from a blue-colored Infosys bus in Electronic City. And this is the first thought that I had in mind, right? I'm just entering a factory, right? The only difference is that we don't have white helmets on, the hard helmets on, but everybody is dressed in a similar blue colored shirt, because blue is probably the most common formal shirt color, and everybody's wearing a tie, right? So we're all in uniform entering into a factory, and there was 2,000 people ahead of me, there was 1,000 others behind me. So that's a remnant of an industrial era of way of working, right? Where you bring people together and make them work in a shift. I mean, that's not how people should work in a knowledge-based economy. I mean, we all proud ourselves for India being a pioneer in the knowledge-based economy, right? And offices should not be the same way. And that's unfortunately the world didn't change fast enough to my liking. But kind of COVID kind of rested all those apprehensions to rest and kind of opened the way of for companies to embrace the true potential of working from anywhere and working from remote. So in that sense, it's been a great blessing in disguise, because all the naysayers don't have a logical reason now to say remote work doesn't work, or work from anywhere doesn't work. So and so basically coming into that, so while work from home, we are saying that work from anywhere is the way to go. Work from home is an important equation of it. Work from office is also an important equation of it. But there's also a space in between where it's not neither home nor your HQ, but you get to work near home and work from anywhere. Of the choice and the flexibility should be there to anybody and everybody. And GoFloaters is that choice in between, is what we think. So that's how COVID has been. How do I say, right, an acceleration to the kind of innovation that we actually want to do with this world.
Fantastic. Actually, they also say, right, no pandemic should go waste. I mean, we are suffering, the world is suffering, but that suffering should lead to some efforts towards some benefits to come. And one has been the mindset on how people could work and should work. I was speaking in one of the forums that who had invited, and I was predicting this model of a tripod model of future of work. One being Office 1.0 of going to office and working, Office 2.0 being your home office. The Office 3.0 is near home office. So that's going to be convenient, best of both. It's like the island in between these, and where collaboration as social beings, we need to collaborate, and innovation would definitely need collaboration and creativity, right? So you can't be boxed inside, and here is an opportunity, even physically, right? So I think here as innovation, a lot of people would think and relate innovation to be a new product. But whatever you have been saying, and how even COVID has played a catalyst role or acceleration for your business, seems to be more in the business model innovation, right? And the place has been there, but what you're creating is, including your name of the company that you created as GoFloaters. Now I can relate and easily appreciate. How did you come out with this name GoFloaters, and what does it mean? And when you created before COVID, right?
Yeah. So in fact, this is like the only, when I was thinking of a name for this idea. So interestingly, December 12th, this kind of idea sets into my head. December 13th, I go meet my mentor, advisor, Sukumar Rajagopalan, who I kind of hold in high regards. Tell him about this whole thing, and I want to do this, right? And so basically, the one name that kind of stuck to me was I wanted to build a tribe of people who believed in what I believe, in the sense that people who believed that they could work from anywhere and they could kind of be productive from anywhere, and they could make a difference to themselves and to the world from wherever they are, right? So I want to build a tribe of floaters, and I want to kind of give them the power to kind of go for it, right? So that's how GoFloaters the name kind of stuck onto my head, saying that I will be the voice, or the company that I'm going to build will be the voice for people who believe in the fact that the world has to change in terms of how it works, and work from anywhere. Is basically, and the other justification to the name was what we would create would be a floating office, right? An office that floats along with you. So whenever you decide to dock yourself, the office is available to you there, right? So that's the other the rationale for the name. But kind of somehow my interest to kind of give voice to the at that point in time, very small percentage of people who believed in remote working. I wanted to kind of add on to their voice as a support, and that was the name.
Fantastic. Actually, there is a need for creativity to support innovation, and naming itself is a game. How you name your innovation and business. And was this the only idea that you had when you moved out of the corporate, or how's your startup journey been? And I know you've also gone through Founder Institute as a platform to launch your company, right? Accelerate and launch your idea to become a company. So talk us about that journey of yours. How did you choose this idea, and what was your journey during Founder Institute days?
Sure. So before I get into that, Naveen, I just want to, my definition of innovation. So you talked about innovation. People think of it as a new product or a new, brand new thing. And or they always associate innovation with something really big that changes history from then on, right? But I feel that anything that challenges the status quo of any aspect of life, right? And brings forth a feasible solution, however big or however small that may be, but offers another alternative to the status quo, right? And it is feasible because, I mean, you could have an idea that's not feasible. You could say, hey, let's all move to Neptune and work from there. Yeah, it's not feasible today, right? So innovation has to be something that's feasible today, right? Not always look into the future. I mean, which is X years away, right? So my definition is like any feasible solution that's viable today that challenges the status quo is an innovation for me, however small, however big it could be, right? So from that sense, I mean, whatever we did, I would kind of relate to that definition of mine, and people who are joining in might have their own definitions. So I just want to set the base, saying that this is what I am talking about, right? Now, coming to your question, Naveen, in terms of my journey, GoFloaters is actually my second startup. My first startup was SMB Sure. It is an insurtech startup that I began in March of 2017, which is where I joined a Founder Institute, and it's been huge foundational support for me in kind of me launching myself as an entrepreneur. Because like I had so much I'd gotten so much accustomed to the corporate world, more than I would love to have been. And I actually needed a way to have a structured thinking as I approached entrepreneurship and as I approached my startup, and Founder Institute and the mentors there kind of were of huge support. And at this point, I would also like to thank you for bringing Founder Institute into India. I know you were one of the prime players, if not the player there. So my first startup was an insurtech startup, and this kind of came naturally because at Cognizant I had worked in insurance for like 14 years, right? So, and I was a technology guy solving problems that the insurance industry faced, and you could imagine that. I approached when I wanted to become an entrepreneur. I say, hey, I know insurance, I know the domain, I know technology. What can I do with it? So it is more like housewife or somebody, a chef's like, I have potato, I have onion, what do I cook with it, right? So that's how I started my entrepreneurial journey. And these two were, I kind of genuinely knew them really well. And my motivation to actually start this one was the floods that we had in Chennai, and also the Varda storm that followed the next year, right? And while the world was fixated on personal losses and human losses, my mind was fixated on businesses and the losses that they had to incur from such a natural calamity, right? And I did some research and reading into it, and found that India, 99% of the businesses, small businesses, don't have insurance, whereas the global average is that 75% of businesses have insurance. So there's a huge divide between insured businesses in India versus insured businesses elsewhere, right? And then I got into that, and I wanted to kind of make insurance easy for small businesses. So that was my first startup, right? And I was really kind of quite passionate about solving that problem. I'm still am. At some point in time, I would love to go back to that and solve that, have a second go at solving that. But while I was doing that as well, like I said, right, I was an entrepreneur. I was meeting different people. The one thing probably Founder Institute made me do was to go meet prospect customers, go meet mentors, go meet other CFOs, go meet other CEOs. It's like Founder Institute made me do a lot of field work, right? And while doing this field work is when I saw that I was spending 1,000 rupees a day, 1,500 rupees on a day on the lattes and frappuccinos and cappuccinos and sandwiches that my body did not want. I didn't want, but that was the only entry ticket for me to stay in a Starbucks or a cafe, CCD, and meet other people. And that frustrated me to a level. I said, I'm going to solve this for myself, right? And I think you would probably, with most entrepreneurs, right? When you are faced with the problem, you solve it for yourself, right? I mean, you become you dog food yourself with your idea. It works for you, and it worked for me. Then I told this to, and there was a little bit of showing off that I did. Hey, this is how I'm solving this. Then my friends wanted to be let into my idea, so I let a few friends into my idea. Then after I did this for a few weeks at a stretch, is when I dawned upon me that, hey, this is a business of its own. This is a startup of its own, and that's how we kind of transitioned from my previous startup of SMB Shore into GoFloaters. So, and the other thing I would probably want to add on, saying that the adage that says opportunity knocks once, I would probably not believe in that. Like in my case, right, opportunity was there, right? I just didn't notice it for 6 months, 8 months, right? When it took me beyond the threshold of my frustration is when that opportunity of GoFloaters even presented itself to me, and I was wise enough to not to ignore it at that point in time and kind of go with it.
Very true. And people like us who've been avid travelers, having a lot of meetings when we travel outside, and most of these are in these places of the coffee shops or the restaurants or the hotel lobbies and so on, right? And people can easily relate to the problem that you've identified and also chose to solve it. Right. And and that's when you need to have that lens. Innovators need to have that lens to see that, identify the problems which are there. So the best of the innovations are usually with identified a problem worth solving, and then solving it, right? And I'm sure you spoke about this journey of yours before this startup. Right. Your other idea of insurance, and all that idea got developed, or rather experience and appetite got developed when you were in corporates. Right. And how involved were you in innovation, and how was your journey in corporate, and your restlessness and interests, and with your experience there? Brief us about that.
Sure. See, I think probably something I'm going to share is probably me. I didn't want to apply this as a pattern to anybody who looks at innovation, but it's me. So some people may be able to relate to it. Some people may not be able to relate to it. But so here's my thing, right? So when I joined workforce, right, I think very very early on in my career, I didn't relate myself to a particular technology or a particular domain, right? I kind of said, hey, I'm going to solve, software is a great way to solve problems, right? So that's the only thing that kind of got me hooked into a software world, right? And I was looking at, and this somehow I had a thought process that every 1.5 years, I'm going to put myself to do something that I've not done before. So I kind of put it as a personal challenge to me and said, every 1.5 years, I'm going to try and learn something new and put something, play with a new toy, so to say, right? I mean, that is more of my personal aspiration, right? At the same time, I want to kind of had that healthy pace of learning something new. So I started as a mainframe developer in Infosys. Didn't know anything about software when I joined Infosys. In fact, I hated computers so much so that I said, hey, if my brain I mean, if I had to trust on the computer's processing power and not my own brain, right? I don't need the computer. That's the mentality in which I joined Infosys, right? I said, but then I saw software as a tool to express my ideas, right? Express or solve problems and kind of see these solutions come to life within a matter of a few minutes. Like I code up something, and then I can see the results coming up. So that kind of hooked me into software in general, right? And like I said, every 1.5 years, I would kind of walk up to my manager and say, boss, this is something that it's gotten to bore me now. Give me something else to do. Give me something new to do, right? And I got away with it. Frankly speaking, I was fortunate to have good bosses through my career who respected that opinion of mine and didn't think of me as having too much in my head, right? They respected that earning of mine to kind of learn something new, right? Because they saw that I would deliver value by doing something new, right? So they trusted me with my gut, and then almost every 1.5 years I would do something new, right? So mainframe, then client server, then web technologies, then mobile technologies, then geolocation based work. Then I got into being an architect. Then I did a lot of interesting work as an architect and as a consultant. So fast forwarding all of that, right? So kind of that is a pattern, right? I always and when the other thing, like I said, you would have realized this when my first day at work, I realized that software IT profession, like it's like the hundreds and thousands of people entering the profession every year. So I wanted to kind of create an identity for myself. Hey, I'm not this, I'm this, right? So that kind of always led me to the corner of the room where fewer people were there. Right? So I would always go to the corner of Cognizant or Infosys where fewer number of people were working on that. So I would always, so there were fewer architects, I wanted to become an architect. There were fewer consultants, I wanted to become a consultant. There were fewer product people inside Cognizant, so I want to build a product within Cognizant, right? So that's how it kind of fewer agile methodologists in Cognizant. So I want to become an agile Scrum master, right? So I always kind of went to the corner which had fewer people because I thought like that's how I'll create my own identity. So there's a lot of personal aspirations in this, right? And I wanted to kind of be known for something, right? So that drove me a lot, right? But incidentally, I realized that as I learned more, I could kind of solve problems more eloquently. I could solve problems with more understanding the problem statement, right? I could solve problems with the best that I could potentially architect or solution together, right? As I got I got aware of more and more technologies and more solutions, right? So that was my journey, right? I never realized that I'm doing innovation, or I never kind of thought of it as I would one day head up the insurance for a team or whatever, right? So that's how I went, right? But then at some point in time, I realized that I had an opportunity, in fact, I would say, right, to become the head of innovation of Cognizant Insurance vertical, right? And I had a track record of doing something useful with my own skills and useful with my team skills. So I got this opportunity to do that. In fact, I kind of went and said, hey, I want to do this, right? I want to set up a lab. I want to set up a team where we focus on what is next in insurance in the next 3 to 5 years, right? And like I said, I was bestowed with great bosses, so they agreed and they gave me a budget. So this is my first pitching, one-liner pitch, and I got some funding, right? So they let me set up a lab, and they gave me a team and said, hey, for the next 2 years, we're not going to bother you. You better show up some good results those 2 years, otherwise we're going to chop this idea off, right? So that 2 years I had to kind of prove the whole thing out, and I'm glad that it kind of worked out for the company, for Cognizant as well. Our innovation team kind of did a lot of amazing stuff. We collaborated with over 200 odd insurance companies across the world, and we pioneered some of new technologies. So, for example, the Singaporean insurance company, we probably launched the first blockchain-based insurance product, right? This was in 2016 rather, right? We did a lot of interesting stuff with a lot of clients, so that's basically was my journey in the corporate world, right? And that kind of gave me more confidence, I would say, to become an entrepreneur later on.
Yeah, fantastic. I think it's the attitude. Several takeaways or points that I can easily relate to in the journey of innovation. One is about identifying a problem. The other is about creating an opportunity. And third is about, how do you build trust? You need to build trust, and you need sponsorship and support from your bosses or your organization. How do you create that? And how do you pitch an idea? And how do you pitch in a way that they are ready to give you 2 years of time where you can try, experiment, and prove something, right? Which is useful to the organization. So organizations need to take risk and invest, right? If you want to create something new or make a difference, you need to move in that, and innovation is the way to do it, right? To bring that change. Incidentally, I can relate to insurance because when I was in the IT company, large IT industry company, where I was the first issue manager for the whole corporation. They created a new role for me because I said, when there's a problem, there's an opportunity. They smiled and said, there's a lot of it. You want to take it? And created a new role called issue manager. And there, when I was working with teams, I realized, how innovative our people are. It's just that we don't know that we are innovative. And for example, these large insurance companies out there in USA or UK, where they used to get their product or IT systems developed here. Our teams were involved in creating logics and systems. Well, insurance sector doesn't want to change much, right? They are probably very cautious because of the statutory and regulations that they need to follow. But on the other hand, they also need to do something new, right? And one such artificial intelligence, so-called today, which has become a reality, it's no more artificial. And by then it was really an artificial, which is not real, is creating logics on, how if you're owning a red color car, there is a research which shows the tendency to drive faster if you have a red color car. And if you're a smoker, then you have that tendency of probably not a healthy life. So falling sick. So insurance might kick in much faster and earlier, and higher chances of kicking in. Like that, so many logic based on the person, persona, profile, and collecting the data, processing that, predicting, and so much of research is involved, and so on. So I'm sure you went through those and gone through these cycles and journeys of innovation in corporate, and now in entrepreneurial innovations that you're going through. How different is it? How different is entrepreneurial innovation as against innovation in corporate?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of similarities, right? So a lot of similarities there too between the two, right? But how they're different inside a corporate, right? So you champion a cause, you take that cause and what you have to offer as an idea to various stakeholders. You have to pitch it to them, right? Because like I said, right, an innovation does not, you can't call something an innovation till it actually rubber meets the road, right? When that idea does not hit the road, it will still be an experiment or an idea, right? So in a corporate world, the gestation period for an idea to become an innovation is longer for obvious reasons. You go through the red tape of the company. Then in our case, because Cognizant was a service provider, so we had to pitch it to, we are not an insurance company, so I cannot implement that idea. So we had to pitch it to another company and they bite into it, right? They give more wings to the idea. So there's a lot of stakeholder management. There's a lot of convincing others to kind of fall in line for idea to become an innovation and for it to kind of see the daylight, right? So it takes time, right? So, but at the same time, there's a safety net below you, right? Potentially there is unlimited funding available for a good idea, right? Potentially again, right? And you can actually, you get a larger canvas to paint on, right? So you don't have to paint on an A4 sheet. You can really paint on a mural on the wall, right? Because that's the kind of resources that's available to you if you have a great idea, right? Whereas in an entrepreneurial innovation, a lot of this red tapeism has gone away, right? So like I said, in my GoFloaters idea, December 12th, I had this thought that I want to spin it off as a separate company. And December 14th, I launched it. December 16th, I had my first revenue coming in, right? So that's the gestation period, right? 2 days or 48 hours was the gestation period for the idea to become an innovation, right? So that kind of is taken away, but then you have limited resources to play along with, right? And your biggest currency for both corporate and entrepreneurial is your vision, right? And how much you believe in the vision of what you want to do, right? And again, I've always believed that a team can do a lot more than an individual can do. It's it's a obvious statement to say, but it is even true in an innovation. It's not the inventor or that brilliant mind that can bring an idea to life, right? You need a team to do that. So, and with entrepreneurship also, you sell your vision, right? That's the biggest currency. You bring more people to become champions of your idea, to take it to market. So that way I would say, like, entrepreneurship is much more thrilling because you kind of constantly are like testing this idea. Hey, I put this out. It's like playing cards. You put this card, okay, see how people react to it. Then you put the next one, right? You kind of have the ability to kind of play with the experiment quite frequently and constantly learn from that piece of it, right? But the one biggest thing that I probably forgot to mention as part of the corporate innovation is that as part of my journey there as well, right? I realized that I, as an individual, and my small team only have so much of understanding of the problem statement that insurance companies world over face. So that realization set in after we created this lab for like a year into it. We realized that if we have a very small we have an understanding of a very small portion of the problems that insurance companies face. And here is like 20,000 people, associates of Cognizant, who work with companies day in and day out, solving problems, like you said, right? With your company, you said that, right? So they're working on projects and they know so much about the problems that their customers face. So we started to crowdsource a lot of ideas, right? So in fact, I would say, if there's one thing that I'm proud of doing at Cognizant is set up the process of crowdsourcing innovation from the fraternity of 20,000 associates who work on insurance projects as at that point in time. And every year we had a healthy pipeline of new ideas that could potentially become innovations, right? And my job was to kind of help those people to come up with those ideas, curate them, groom them, and take it to a level where we could take it and pitch it to some of our insurance clientele, and see them through to kind of meet the end user, right? That is intended to. And I'm doing that with my entrepreneurial life also, because the moment you have a team, it is a journey of the team. It's no longer the journey of an entrepreneur or the founder, right? It's now everybody's dream to build whatever you're building now, and you kind of take in as much as you can from everybody else to kind of take your innovation.
Absolutely. In fact, that's when they call team as together everyone achieves more, and that's what team is. And in the journeys of innovation, so it's so important to have the team. And in large corporate, I think the best resource a corporate would have is human resource. And how did you participate, and the process that you followed in corporates,
right,
to nurture this potential of innovation potential that everyone has, but people don't know or don't believe.
Right.
So what is the process that you followed, and how did you manage that?
So before we, so this again could be very specific to Cognizant, but here, this is what used to happen, right? So Cognizant as a company gave a lot of weightage to innovation, right? So they wanted, and this is their way of differentiating from the Wipros of the world or the TCS of the world. So they always said, they actually promised while inking some large contracts that we will deliver X million dollars of innovation every year to you, right? And I personally felt that when you start to measure something, like with many things, the objective is to meet the metrics than to be creative about doing something, right? So even before we started to crowdsource innovation, Cognizant had an innovation index where teams would have to report how much of innovation they did and all that, right? But all of these were, and I personally felt that the ability of these teams is much more than just incrementally adding $1,000 of savings to a company or $10,000 of savings to a company, right? A disruptive or a challenge the status quo did not happen, in my opinion, right? With those kind of innovation processes and metrics. So I said, how do we, me and my team and my bosses, everybody kind of, we wanted to say, hey, we'll have to make, there's a lot of people who work for these projects day in and day out. They may have brilliant ideas that how do we funnel that? How do we capture that, right? That's a challenge, right? Then once we capture it, how do how do we logically take that to the next level and so on and so forth. So my biggest learning from studying this was people don't get inspired to innovate because, I mean, there are brilliant ideas available with in people's head, but they say, hey, okay, I'll put it somewhere, but what happens to it? I don't know what happens to it, right? So they were not motivated to come forward with these ideas, right? So they had ideas, but then they said, okay, I'll share it with somebody, but what is going to happen to that? And it's going to die down. So that is the attitude that some of the associates had at Cognizant. So basically, what we had to do is like we gamified the entire process. So we set up a once in a year competition which would go on for 3 months. It was more like, and we called it IPL, right? So, and this was launched during the year. I mean, it is the second year of IPL. So IPL was pretty hot in the minds of people. So we kind of modeled our entire innovation process around the cricket IPL, but we called it the Insurance Premier League and Innovation Premier League, not instead of the Indian Premier League. So we kind of did pretty much, we kind of took that idea. So there will be captains, there'll be franchisee owners. So basically, BU heads will be franchisee owners. So they will create a team, all right? They'll depute a captain who will champion that entire thing. There'll be 11-member playing team. There can be 4 foreign players, right? So when foreign players means the insurance team can collaborate with the technology practice, or they could collaborate with a BFS practice, or they could collaborate with a data warehousing team, right? So they can bring 4 other people from outside of their own, their own project team, right? They form a 11-member team, and this 11-member team goes through a series of round 1, and then they have playoffs, and then they have the finals playing, right? So we kind of created this elaborate kind of a contest of sorts, and which gamified the entire process of coming with an innovation and kind of doing a lot of fun things as a team, right? Because you come up with some idea and kind of there's nobody else giving voice to it, it kind of dies down pretty soon, right? So 11-member team, all of them singing the same song, all of them pitching for the same idea, all of them passionate about it. And we saw like people were spending weekends and nights and all that working on this innovation idea because they had a day job to work on, right? So they would come to our lab and say, hey, can you keep your lab open? And we're going to come work on the weekend because we want that IoT sensor, or we want this cloud infrastructure, or we want this access to the iPads and the iPhones and all that, right? So, or the Alexa device or whatever, right? So, and this 3 months was like, basically people were looking forward to this 3 months that would happen, this innovation challenge would happen, and kind of would do that, right? And the other important thing is like, what do we do with that idea that wins? Because if giving an award, giving a trophy is not the end all of it, right? So we focus more on once the idea got through the challenge and won the contest, or even came in the playoffs. So we put a lot of effort in kind of taking those ideas to customers, because nothing beats motivation when you see your idea being seen by somebody else, a customer, and they talking good about your idea, giving feedback about it. So we kind of put a lot of focus and processes around how do we take this idea forward, right? Rather than it just becoming an Excel row and a sheet saying, hey, innovation number 1, this is the value to it, right? So
fantastic. I love that whole approach of gamifying and the culture that you were able to manage. And in fact, this itself is a case study of innovation where IPL, as in Premier League, which is a cricket game, was already an innovation, and you were able to take that, apply it in a different domain to get some workability and get some ideas flowing, and having fun is so important during the journeys of innovation. So
right.
You've been able to put all that. That is in a large corporate, and you had resources, the luxury, the labs, and so on. So in a startup, how do you cultivate and build culture for innovation?
I think the first step for that starts with hiring the right people, in my opinion, right? So as a startup, right, you have a very small team to begin with, right? And I'm again, we would still be categorized as an early stage startup, right? So so when you're in an early stage startup, I think getting the right people on who are truly who also believe equally in changing the status quo of the problem statement that you're working on, right? So that's probably the biggest fitment I would kind of do to fit a person who we are recruiting, right? And in fact, me and my co-founder would joke that, hey, our recruitment process is even more stringent than the joint entrance exam by IIT JEE, because we screen through so many resumes, probably thousands of them to recruit like 5 people, right? And it used to be like a pretty long process, right? And and whoever kind of came through that entire process of grueling process, we knew for sure they like the vision of this company, right? So because other people would kind of say, hey, this is you're making me do too much. I don't want your job, right? So they'll run away, right? But that's what we did, right? And so basically, the first step is to kind of having the right people who actually are equally passionate about the problem that you're trying to solve, right? Because without the appreciation of the problem that you're trying to solve, they can't give you ideas or they can't innovate, right? That's number one. And number two, I wouldn't say whether it was the circumstances or the process that we set in, but now it's become a process. But earlier on, we kind of always once in 6 months or once in a few months, we would be me and my co-founder would go back to the team and say, hey, what if you had $1 million now, right? And what if we didn't have the legacy of whatever we've done so far? What would you do with GoFloaters now, right? So we would kind of put this back as a question to our team and ask them, I give you $1 million. So resources is not a constraint, right? So basically you can kind of create a big white canvas for yourself. But the problem statement is still being the same. What would you do differently? Or how would you approach this problem now? Because you now have this last 6 months of learning from whatever you've done so far. And a lot of things don't work and a few things work. So we constantly kind of went back to the drawing board, so to say. And here also, like each team member would pitch to the rest of us. Everybody got the same vote, and we'll vote on the idea. We'll kind of do a casting of votes and say, if 5 people like this idea, 2 people like this idea, 3 people like this idea, and all that, right? And then we'll choose the top 2 and do a little bit more analysis on the data points, the business feasibility of that idea, right? Should we do that along with GoFloaters, or should that be whatever, right? Should that be a side project? So that's how we kind of, and again, like I said, it was not a conscious effort. We were thrown into those valley of deaths, so to say, right, in our journey, that we had to constantly think, hey, we are now stuck with this problem. How do we come out of it, right? So tell me.
So they say that necessity is the mother of all inventions, right, and innovations. So right. Here is the situations which is put you in that spot where you have to innovate, and that becomes a habit. In fact, one of the questions which has come out from our member who wants to ask you is, in this journeys that you've had, have you gone through and made mistakes? And and what mistakes? And then what have you learned from it? How could it help others not to repeat the same mistake? In fact, I can relate this very well for the simple reason when I was working with Questec, and my CEO one day called me and said, Naveen, do you want to learn from your mistakes? I said, yeah, definitely. Who doesn't want? And then he asked me, do you have the time to commit all by yourself? So then I realized, I can't commit all mistakes by myself. So if I have to be smart, I have to learn from others' mistakes. So somebody here, our member, is so smart. They've asked a question to you. Tell us about your mistakes, and in the innovation journey, how important it is to, mistakes are a part and parcel. So, and what mistakes have you made, and what have you learned, and share it with others.
No, I'll be the first to admit that I messed up multiple times in the past, right? And there's nothing hiding away from it, because, like you said, that's the way to learn. At the same time, I've been extremely fortunate to have, like I said earlier on, very good bosses, and with my entrepreneurial journey, great mentors from FI and through other things that I've had the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, or learn from the mistakes of other startups that they mentor and things like that. So obviously my learning has been a little accelerated because of that, right? So here are my top 3 mistakes that I've done with my entrepreneurial journey, right? The first mistake, which is my first startup, right, was that I think even before I joined, I kind of jumped from Cognizant, quit my job, and I started to work on my startup called SMB Sure. I already had a solution in my head. right? I'd already committed to building a solution, right? I already knew these are the moving parts of the solution. This is the technology that I would use for the solution. This is how the interface will look like. This is what stakeholder A will do. This is what stakeholder B will do, and so on and so forth, right? So I had a prejudice towards a solution that I had in mind already. And in spite of being pointed out by many of the FI mentors, I kind of still resisted the resisted that to change the approach. But and that I would say was the biggest mistake that I did with my first startup, is to kind of getting prejudiced and too attached to a solution too early, when you don't even know the problem at a subsequent, I mean, at a enough depth, right? So that's something I would say. It is to not get not I mean, like somebody said to Ilayaraja, right, or to some other composer, right? When do you know this violinist has to play the tune, right? So that composer said that when that instrumentalist feels the weight of not being able to play for so long a time is when they start playing, right? So the thing has to build up, right? The tense moment has to build up, and they say, hey, this is the right moment to start trying and thing. So I think that applies to being an entrepreneur as well. So you should not get to the solution till the problem is haunting you so much that you know every piece of the problem, right? Like the hexagons behind me. You should have this clearly in your mind on the problem before you kind of write the first line of code, or create a website, or write a piece of document that describes your solution, right? And I didn't do this with my first startup, right? And that's my first mistake, right? Which I would want others not to repeat.
You have just a minute to, I think the mistakes can take us full time. So go ahead and share the other two.
The second one was like launching too late, right? My first startup took 8 months and I didn't launch. The second startup took 2 days and I launched, right? And I had the first revenue coming in 2 days. So launch quickly, not wait for the perfect product to be there, but launch, right? The third mistake I would say, like once you've hired the right team, it's to understand that it is no longer just your dream. It's a collective dream now, and it's to trust your team and then let them also have a piece of this journey to be done their way, right? As an entrepreneur, you think it's your baby and you want everybody to handle your baby with care, right? And you fail to realize that it is no longer just your baby. It's a baby of your core team that's also trusted their careers with this idea, and it's to believe that now it's a common, it's a shared baby, and everybody has got equal say in how that baby grows. Is to kind of then, for that you have to start trusting your team, and let them also have a piece of the fun and make some mistakes. Don't be too, hey, don't do this, don't do that, this will not work, that will not work. I think that's something that I did earlier on with GoFloaters, and I've hopefully corrected that along the way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shyam. And it was very pleasant, inspiring. I'm sure now we all know as to why you are on Inspiring Innovators as in this show, right? And as a parting comment, as 3 tips or a few tips that you could give it to aspiring innovators, aspiring entrepreneurs, and aspiring entrepreneurs, that would be a fantastic gift to all our members. And I'm sure we should stay connected, and others should stay connected. You should probably tell how they could reach you out. So over to you, some few tips that could be inspiring to others.
Right. So the first thing I would say is, like, innovation is not a big thing. You don't have to say, hey, this is not innovative, right? So any idea, like I said, challenges the status quo of the accepted theory that the world runs on. It could be small, it could be big. It's an innovation. So back yourself on that. Don't kind of say, hey, this is what is this? This is a small thing, nobody will appreciate this. That's probably the wrong approach, I would say, right? So you don't have to, I mean, all of us don't have to be inventing the next light bulb, right? That's not the innovation, right? Every small incremental improvement that you do to this status quo is an innovation. So back yourself on that, number one. Number two, you can't be an introvert. An innovator has to build a lot of he has to build backers to the idea, right? You need people to kind of take your idea to life. You can't kind of single-handedly champion that, right? So be vocal about it, raise it to people. If you want to with your bosses, say, I don't like this. This is not the way we should do it. We should do it this way, right? And back yourself with the confidence that you have and with the research that you've done on it. So be a little bit more vocal about what you do, right? Because you need to build my momentum behind your idea by having more backers to it. Number three, test your idea as quickly as possible, right? And whatever that quick means to you, right? Quick should not be, in my opinion, quick should not be more than a month. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a startup, then you should be able to test your idea out within a month of you having a good idea of what that is going to look like, right? If you're an entrepreneur, it could take longer because of the corporate structure, but test it quickly without being able to test the idea out and without getting feedback. It's not an innovation any longer, and it's of no use to anybody. You could have the brilliant idea written down in the notebook. Nobody's going to kind of give you credit for that, right? And then it just kind of hit me sometimes that, hey, I thought about this 2 years back, and this bloody fellows implemented this and making millions from it, right? So, and you'll always kind of have that kind of feeling when you don't take that idea forward, right? I thought about this like a few years back. What's the use of that, right? So kind of go with, back yourself up and go with your gut feeling. Yeah, mistakes will happen. You will have to take risks. You can't have a cushy job and a paycheck and everything and still be still do new things. So you will have to take risks at some point in time, whether you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur. So back yourself and take those calculated risks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was so valuable. Reminds me of one of the quote that I've authored. A dream is a dream when you don't do anything about it. Right. A dream is a dream when you don't do anything about it. So you have to do, and these tips that you've given should help people to march forward, take that risk, and try new things, be it as an intrapreneur, as an entrepreneur, or somebody who's passionate about innovation to bring about the change. Thank you so much for being on this show, Inspiring Innovators, a show to showcase people who are innovative, their innovations, and the impact it is creating. And I'm sure people would be inspired about the journeys that you've had, the innovation journeys, the experience that you've shared today. Thank you again. Fantastic. What is the best way that people could follow you, reach you out, or be inspired and stay connected?
The best way would be LinkedIn. So just search for Shyam and GoFloaters. You should be able to find that quite easily. So that's probably the best way. The second best way is to write to me at shyam@gofloaters.com with whatever you want to do. And like I said, we're open to any kinds of collaboration and any kinds of sharing the journey with other people. So those two ways, I think you should be able to get me respond to you.
Yeah, so this question was important specifically for you because I know you are floating. So you are a GoFloater. Yeah. So if you are floating, how do they catch you? So that's the reason I wanted to have this. So thanks again. And for everybody who is tuned and listening to this and watching us, have a safe stay and continue to innovate, be inspired, and bring about the change which is worth bringing. And over to you, Manjula. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, hello all again. Hope you enjoyed and inspired by this talk. I just want to announce few upcoming events and training programs from the Institute of Inspiring Innovation. On 5th November, we have Fundamentals of Patents for Entrepreneurs and Startups as part of our Innovation Insights webinar series. This starts at 7 p.m. So another one we have is starting on 18th November, we have a 3-part virtual training program, Systems Thinking for Strategic Initiatives. On 21st November, we have another virtual training program, Reinventing Yourself to Power People, Purpose and Performance. Please visit www.triply.today or write to us on info@triply.today for any information you may need. Take care, stay safe. Best wishes to you in your innovation journey. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Naveen. Thanks for the opportunity.